Dear Promise and Cobra family, this month will be transcript only. The reason is I wanted to clarify some misunderstandings from the text that I had in the interview. This morning Cobra and I did just that. I have redacted certain things from my original intro and from the interview. I apologize for posting early and then taking this down, as Cobra was forthright about his views and answers to me. We both do not want to create any drama between us, as there is none. The mission is bigger than both of us. He and I are clear on elements that we agreed to remove. I apologize for this, but there will be no sound this month unless Rick can do more editing, which I cannot afford to pay for this month. Hello, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to another special edition for the Victory of Light radio show. I'm your host Rob Potter. I want to thank the Pyramid One Network and Bob Charles, as well as Rick Sarafico, for his great transcription on the voice modulation and the editing process, as well as Donnell, who does a wonderful job transcribing this interview, and of course Senior in Taiwan for his final editing of the transcription process. I wish to thank Cobra for coming on here today, and especially to give him a special feeling of love and embrace. I also want you to know that I do have a deep level of love and respect for Cobra. Without further ado, here is the Cobra interview, who is my brother, friend and emissary of light. Victory to the light, Rob, and here we are again with our emissary of light, Cobra. I want to thank you for coming here again to the Victory of Light radio show. I know it's always a pleasure to share with you the planetary situation update and what's going on. Welcome, Cobra. Cobra, thank you for your invitation. It's always a pleasure to do those interviews. Rob, yes, it's been quite a scene. It seems as though after the last interview we had the Paris, and then we talked about it, and now we have, of course, the San Bernardino false flag shootings, and it seems to be having the desired effect. There have been attacks on Muslims and various things of this nature. Can you address a little bit to the mindset of how people can overcome this type of negativity and what we can do to heal this situation? Cobra, okay. It is important to understand that those false flag attacks have one single purpose: to keep people involved and enmeshed in this situation, to have the images of this and thought forms of this rolling in their mind, to have their focus on this. It's actually very effective through the use of the mass media. They kill a few people, or they stage a killing of a few people, and this image and this message gets distributed to the mass media and very effectively lowers the vibrational frequency of the people and very effectually draws the people away from constructive action. The only remedy to this is drop this from your awareness. Just let it go. There are more important things that are happening that have much more influence on the planetary situation, and instead of focusing on those false flag attacks, it is much more important to focus on the goal of the planetary liberation and what you can do to assist in that process. Rob, thank you very much. As a result of the Paris attacks and the San Bernardino, the cabal, has very actively been promoting through multiple agencies including Congress, like 9/11, a series of new laws to restrict movement and to deny visas, and, of course, are creating all this type of negativity in terms of the lawful administration to tighten the noose of the NWO physically. Can you allay the fears of people from direct information from the resistance that none of these plans? I mean, it seems as though they are going to be restricting people's movements in and out of the country quite a bit now. Can you comment on this for us, please? Cobra, okay. I would not say that none of this will be successful, but I will say the majority of their plans will not be successful. You see, they are trying all the time to restrict movements, to trigger wars, to do whatever they can to implement their NWO. But I can say here, basically their plan for the NWO, their goal was to complete the process in the year 2000. And obviously it didn't happen. They were planning on having a totalitarian world government completely operational by the year 2000. Now 15 years later, they still have not been successful, and there is only one reason: the existence of the light forces, which means us, which means the resistance movement, which means various types of space brothers and sisters and many other positive beings that are preventing their plans daily. So I would say that about 80 to 90% of their plans never see the light of day because they are stopped. Some of the plans do get successful to a certain degree but never completely. So whatever their plans are, they are mostly not going to be successful. Of course, before the planet is liberated we cannot guarantee or we cannot say that all their plans will be stopped, but most of them will be. I would not focus so much on the fear of what is going to happen, on what they are going to do, but again, focus more on what can I do to speed up the process of liberation and ensure our victory. Rob, thank you very much for that. I've recommended for many people to just turn off their TV. I get a lot of panic requests and fear-based information from a lot of people. I recommend you turn off your television. Spend more time in nature and try to connect to your own inner self in a good way. Speaking of that, we're going to jump around here. We're going to go right to some other people's questions. I have a few more I'll pepper in, but we have quite a few questions today. A lot of people want to know how can they get a feel for their energetic bodies, the astral etheric or plasma plane while they are still in their body. Is there any method that you can recommend? I've recommended pyramids, crystals and lasers. I think Sintamani stones have had some good effect on people. Can you offer some suggestions? Cobra, okay. Basically the core of this question is that people would like to be aware of other aspects of their being, other higher dimensions parts of their being. Actually, everybody is aware of that all the time. If you have any emotions, you feel your astral body. If you're thinking, you feel your mental body. If you feel any type of energy running through your body, if you are tired or hyperactive or whatever your energy mood is, you feel your etheric body. So people are feeling those things already. They are not aware of it, but what is even more important here is to be aware of the source of all this, which is your soul, your higher self, your I Am presence. And you are also always aware of that simply by being. It is the state of existence. You are. And this I Am, or you are is your soul. So I would not give any particular advice of how to get in contact with that because there are many books out there and each individual person has an individual path to reach that goal. I would say follow your deepest inspiration, your deepest vision and you will get there. Rob, okay. Thank you. I'd recommend meditation and prayer, talking to the mighty I Am and to listening for the answers within. Here we have another quick question. It's an opinion and not so much about Kesh here. They say, Kesh, had put out a post from his technology that he was indicating that there was going to be some earthquakes. Obviously, the Sintamani stone and the Great White Brotherhood and the net of the light forces are negating some of these effects. It seems like they're going to appear, but don't. Can you comment on the possibilities of upcoming earthquakes around the world and North America in particular? Cobra, okay. The situation the last few years didn't change much. There will be occasional earthquakes because the Earth energy grid needs to release certain tensions. The light forces can, of course, absorb most of that shock, but not all of that shock, because the Earth as a living entity, as an energy being, has to carry all the stress of the cabal and humanity combined. Plus, the Chimera group and the plasma accretion vortex and all this is quite much of a stress to the planetary energy body. And although there is much assistance here, some of this pressure needs to be released through earthquakes. Most of the earthquakes happen in areas and in a way there is as little casualties and damage as possible. Rob, very good, thank you. Another question that I kind of like myself. You always wonder here, and, of course, as timelines you never know. The question was as a human on this planet, will we ever be able to take back our missing DNA strands or they say use 100% of the brain, I mean, unite to our divine self? Obviously, this is the plan. Will this happen in our lifetime, or is this, depending on the age of course, is this imminent or is this more like a gradual change that will happen individually for certain people and for some people it won't? Cobra, the event is the moment when this change will be initialized. And, of course, it will take some time depending on the individual case. Each individual being will go through their own process, but the process will start at the event. It will be a massive improvement at that time, a quantum leap you might say. And there will be fuller subsequent quantum leaps later, But I would say the event is the moment when you have this critical mass of consciousness present on the planet, when you being as a race, as a collective, to use our higher abilities to activate the dormant part of our brain and dormant part of our DNA. And then this will no longer be an issue. It will be simply a very fast accelerated evolution. The problem is the time before the event, when everybody is still suppressed artificially. The Cabal and the Chimera are still suppressing the collective evolution of humanity. This is the reason why people are feeling so unhappy with the present situation. Rob: yes, it's definitely a drain on the soul for those who are in contact and see what's going on here. The next question is about Osho, or Bhagwan Sri Rajneesh. He certainly was a person to expose many programs and beliefs. Fred Bell said that he was a kind of like a teacher and attracted what he called sixth-ray devotees, people who looked to someone else for their liberation. In a certain sense, a lot of people carried his picture around. I did notice a lot of open consciousness. Someone was kind of wondering, he's passed on now, I think we can have a comment, kind of curious about what you felt about his mission and stuff. I know a lot of things were political there. Could you talk about Osho? Cobra: he was a soul coming from the Sirius star system. His mission was to awaken the Western societies to the reality of emotional processes, clearing of the emotional body. He assisted to a certain degree in the liberation of sexual energy and integrating that energy with the energy of the heart, and he was having a very important mission in bringing practical tools for the Western society, how to deal with emotions. This was a key part of his mission. Of course, there were other aspects, and, of course, the Cabal was after him. He had poisoning attempts and he was actually killed by the Cabal. Rob: yes, I would agree with that. He was really cool. He actually created a thing in Oregon and basically brought in a bunch of people in a democratic process and took over the voting so that his group wouldn't be harassed for what they're doing in the city there. There were some elements within his following that were purchasing guns. He was in silence for many years, so there were people that got carried away. Some of his leaders were actually hoarding guns and some numerous Rolls Royces and stuff. Cobra: his answer was garbled and Daniel could not transcribe it. Rob: okay. This is an interesting one. Someone says, the last time you spoke about the food chain and the Archons and the Dracos and the other groups. Could you address the Anunnaki? I've got quite a few questions on them and their influence. They're the ones who claim to be in charge of the Red Dragons. The questions are they still here on the planet? Are they Archons? Who are they? Can you talk about their history? Cobra: okay. I never met one, so I cannot answer this question. Rob: from your intelligence, can you know, are there any of the original Anunnaki, Archons, Draconians alive on the planet? Cobra: my intelligence does not mention that name. They don't acknowledge that name. They know certain races and certain factions by different names, but they don't acknowledge that name. Rob: okay. Dr. Frank told me that some of those records were taken from older records and were manipulated. My understanding, I don't know if this would fit in, but some of them were beings that were here interacting with humans and did kind of put themselves in positions of power. You've obviously heard the story of Zecharia Sitchin, where they claim to be our creators and they used us as slaves. Cobra: yes, of course, but my sources say that all these stories have been fabricated and there is a lot of misinformation. Rob: okay. That coincides with Dr. Frank Strange's information and understanding that there were elements of ET things here, and certainly is trying to make these beings seem like they are our lords and masters. Next question. Someone has asked a question and I didn't ask specifically that question because I wasn't really sure. I wanted more background. He gave me a very long convoluted background on the people, but I want to pronounce their name correctly. Could you talk about? Ben Fulford talked about the Hyksos, descendants of Abraham's religion and their influence in history? And are they still here? Cobra: yes, this is part of one branch of the Khazarians, or should we say forefathers of the Khazarians. Basically, we can go much further in history because the whole area that has been mentioned already around the Chechnya vortex. The core of this area is the home of one branch of the biblical man. The same area was used as a portal through various Archon invasions to bring reptilian hybrids and humanoid bodies to planet Earth, and these are the ones that we call the Khazarians. Rob, you don't believe there is one creator, that there is multiple gods? Cobra, I believe there is one absolute source, but the absolute source is not represented correctly in monotheistic religions. Actually, monotheistic religions were misusing the fact of the distance of the absolute in order to control people. Because Archons are quite skilled in using spiritual truth and turning them into the tool of control. Rob, I agree that it has been misused by monotheistic religions, but I believe that the one absolute source of creator, that you can have a personal relationship with that, although, anything you can say or think about it would limit that. Cobra, that's true. But I was just saying that monotheistic religions were created not with the purpose of connecting a person with the Absolute but with the purpose of controlling people's connection with the Absolute. Rob, my info from the GWB is that certain incarnations were brought here to actually bring the truth and the light, as it was attempted in Egypt and in Central America to re-establish a proper understanding of relationship to the one living God. Can you tell me what you think about Moses? Cobra, Moses was a priest that was initiated in Egypt's mystery schools. Rob, okay. Who initiated him into the mystery schools? Were those positive light beings or negative beings? Cobra, yes. Positive, yes. Rob, can you explain how he was misused and what he did? Cobra, he was misused later when he transferred some of the teachings of the mystery school in a way. He actually wasn't intending to do that. The purpose of the Archons behind the scenes was, as I've said before, to put themselves as an intermediary between a person and their own spiritual experience. Rob, what was his contact on the mountain when he brought back the tablets? Was that positive or negative contact? Cobra, that was positive contact. Rob, that was pretty powerful contact there. I would feel that his mission was pretty successful to a certain extent. Obviously, there is a human element and they didn't accept the commandments. I'm kind of curious how you say that later on in his mission, after he passed away, his teachings were misused. Cobra, basically, he had a very powerful spiritual experience, and he was also trained as a priest, and the Archons have managed to put certain parts of their teachings into his teachings. The same thing that happened with most of the prophets at that time. Rob, yes. The teachings are always changed. The prophet has a unique spiritual experience with superluminal light beings. You opened up a big can of worms for me. Can you talk about your concept of monotheism or one true living God or of peoples? I don't see it as a secular religion, but as an individual's relationship to the absolute creator. What are your views on that? Cobra, basically the absolute is not the creator. Universe was created with an interaction with the absolute and the contingency. This is number one. And what most religions do, they simplify the understanding of how the universe works and they put certain other elements into this that they act as a controlling medium for the people. So the purpose of most religions was not to bring people closer to the absolute, but to distance them from the absolute. And somebody who did not agree with that particular version of the truth was not accepted and was persecuted. Rob, I would agree with part of that. I'm kind of curious. What created the contingency? It's kind of a thing. Something doesn't come from nothing. You talk about the absolute. The creator was created by. Explain to me how creation was created and what your concept of the first cause is? Cobra, basically, there is no first cause. Absolute was not created, it always was, is and will be. Contingency was not created with a purpose. It was an outburst of a random function, an anomaly, and those two things are logically opposite. They are two very strong but opposite forces, and the tensions between those two created the universe. Rob, yeah, okay. I would agree with that. The absolute always is and was and will be. I guess that's just a difference in terms. I would call that the creator. Do you believe in infinitesimal reflection of which we all are of all that is and will be? You don't want to call it God. I understand that because it has a lot of connotations of individual anthropomorphic being. Do you believe an individual can have a personal relationship with all that is, ever was and will be? Cobra: yes, of course. Rob: good. That makes me feel a lot better about what you're saying here. Do you feel that the intent of the initiates and the prophets that are working with the light forces and the spiritual redemption of the planet to bring about the truth of the workings of the universe and its original intent is to bring us back to the truth, obviously? So the question is, and you clearly stated that this has been hijacked by the archons. Is that correct? Cobra: yes. Rob: okay. Can you speak about the mission of Yeshua and the Christ and that powerful plan of redemption from the planet and the message there? In your opinion. Obviously that was hijacked as well, but do you feel that Christ was a divine personage from the highest levels of the administration of the material and non-material universes of the multiple dimensional beings that are administrators of creation? I guess we could call them? We all work together in that sense. Can you comment on the level of success of his mission? Cobra: he was the first who brought a very important message, and that is the message of unconditional love, and this is the key message to ensure the success of the planetary liberation. In one way he was very successful because many people from that time on began to understand the meaning of compassion, the meaning of unconditional love, the meaning of pure and unconditional light, and they began to understand, at least some of them, the importance of the inner child. But the archons managed to suppress many parts of his message and have managed to distort the rest of his message, so I would say the vast majority of people that speak about him do not understand that message. So in one way his mission was very successful, and on the other hand the success was not as it had been planned. The hopes of the light forces were much greater. Rob: yes, obviously. It seems to be that there is some people, and I believe that he has a certain place in the future of the earth to clarify things, and some people say and feel that he has a certain authority in what takes place. According to Commander Valiant Thor, he interacts closely with the solar councils, and when he makes a decree as an ascended master for something to happen, the entire forces of the Light Confederation see to it that things happen, and that he is kind of an authority in the redemption of the planet. Would you agree with it or not? Cobra: not completely. I would say every being has a certain say in what is going to happen, including him and including everybody else. Rob: would you say as an ascended master and from his position, that he has a higher say than, say, some beings on the Ganymede portal, or would he be subservient to that? Cobra: I would not say that anybody is higher or lower. We are all emanations of the One. Rob: okay. Let's get it a little lighter here. In the Avatar series it says that the Na'vi have been portrayed with tapered toes. Some people call that Egyptian feet. Can you talk about that? Is that ET or random human mutations? Cobra: actually, it's both. There were some experiments in Atlantis with this, and it was also a random human mutation. Rob: thank you. Can you talk about what's going to happen with education after the event? Cobra: education will finally start getting interesting for children because the truth will be told. The reason why children are bored at school is because the truth is not being told. They are being fed lies. The truth about human history, about real science, about free energy, about ET contact, about the reality of behind-the-scenes politics will make things much more interesting. People will be motivated and also higher intellectually. Spiritual abilities will make this process much easier. Rob: can you talk about the Chimera group's interactions with the human population in the 20s and 30s? You mentioned Karl Hauer from the Germans. Can you elaborate a little bit on that? Is this related to? Did they come out from the inner earth to contact him? What was happening there? Cobra: the Chimera group very rarely contacts a human being from the surface. What they did was they did not contact him directly. They sent some emissaries of a certain negative dragon faction from Tibet, and he was in contact with that faction. Rob: right. There's a black Tibetan group that's kind of got their own little offshoot, I've heard. A lot of people are asking what will happen after the event, jobs and stuff. Can you just assure the people that are working in what we call nuclear power plants, chemical stuff? Can you explain a little bit how the event will take care of them and how they'll transition to new jobs? Cobra, okay. People are basically asking those questions from a perspective of insecurity, that if they don't work in such and such branch or industry of where they were trained that they will run out of money or anything of that nature. People need to understand that after the event, there will be a restricting of the whole economy on the planet. Even if your job post is closed, many new ones will open which will bring you more prosperity. This is the basis of the same question. This fear that wants to keep things as they are is blocking evolution, and evolution needs to happen even if there is a little bit of shaking and a little bit of change which might be unpleasant for a short period of time. The outcome will be much better for everyone. As an example, if someone is working at a nuclear power plant right now and the event happens, maybe he'll be out of work for a few months, then he'll begin to work on a different project where he'll be able to use his expertise with a greater pay, less stress, and be much more productive. Rob, thank you very much. People have some questions about the veil. You have mentioned this. What is the source? Is this strictly from man-made technology and satellites? Can you talk about what is the source of the primary thing? This is I guess you'd call this, the plasma scalar field network. Is this mostly off-planet or does it work in conjunction with Earth-based technology like cell phones? Cobra, the basis of the bases is very ancient, very old scalar wave technology which has been here for at least 25,000 years. I would say the network has been completed and completely functional for the last 25,000 years. The last century more and more additions were made to the veil based upon the evolvement of the military-industrial complex. Their own technologies like HARP, like different, GWAN towers for an example, then cell phones were added to the network, microchips, layers upon layers, infrared scalar devices, radar devices, many layers upon layers, satellites. Many of the keyhole satellites are part of the network, and on and on. Rob, okay. Thank you. That answers that question. Here's a question. Someone wants to know the significance of layer armor. I think it's found in Costa Rica only so far. Someone says, Atlantean stone. Do you know about this blue stone, layer armor? Cobra, yes, it comes from Dominican Republic. There is only one place where it is found. It does have the vibrational frequency of Atlantis because that region was a quite important temple complex in Atlantis and the spiritual energy of that temple complex is encoded in that stone. Rob, thank you, very much. What is an empath being? Can you describe an empath? Cobra, empath is a being that is able to feel other people's emotions and is actually, I would describe it as an emotional clairvoyant, someone who can perceive other people's emotions, can understand them sometimes better than other people, can read other people's intentions. Sometimes empaths were used in secret military programs to detect lies or any kind of manipulations. Also, those empaths are not 100% reliable. Sometimes they can detect things that are not detectable otherwise. Rob, thank you. You said that, of course, all the religions have been misled and taken over here. Since we got some of the Muslim stuff going on, we have a series of questions here that were kind of interesting and I'll let you share about it. They want to know what is the mystical symbolism of the cube building? What is the stone made of, the foundation? Is the foundation a rock? Have any influence? What is the city of Mecca? Do they have special values and what is the purpose of the pilgrimage around this stone? Can you talk about any astrological timing of Ramadan or the Hajj around the stone? Basically, we want to know what's going on with the stone in Mecca and what that is. Cobra, okay. Yes, of course. This area was actually a very important goddess vortex before Islam came. It was one of the worship centers for one of the pre-Islamic goddess for a few of the pre-Islamic goddesses. The archons have used that place, that location, to suppress the goddess vortex there. They have used that cube to suppress the goddess vortex and that cube was prepared with occult magical rituals to enslave people in third dimension. And the rotation of people in Hajj around the stone was further used to charge that stone with the people's energy and to keep them enslaved even more. There are many rituals being made every year at Hajj from the etheric and plasma plane. People are being programmed through that programming center, ethically. The same situation is happening in the Vatican, exactly the same process, exactly the same technologies being used through the Vatican. Rob, thank you, very much. So this ceremonial order and magic of the light forces that could be used positively is being used for mind control. Someone had said that the Naples complex, you said that the event has never taken place and so there is no Akashic records for us to connect to. They wanted to know, will the truth of our origins, our soul families and our lifetimes and earths, or else will be an immediate result of the event, or will this be a gradual unfolding process? Cobra, I have already answered this question today. It will be a gradual process which will have a big quantum leap at the time of the event. Rob, okay. Someone says the Hopperbergs, can you talk, are they the dark bow? Cobra, you always need to understand that if somebody belongs to a certain family doesn't automatically mean that it's a bad person, but the family as a whole is part of the cabal. I would say old European nobility cabal structure. Rob, yes, I can talk about that in my thing. I have a person who is part of that family and did not like the reptilians running around on her property, but they were. The next question here is, what is the impact on the body and mental health when meat eating? Why meat eating affects us negatively in our mental and our physical health? Obviously, the physical is due to hormones and improper treatment of animals, but could you talk about any other impacts of eating meat? Cobra, there are many. First, when the animal is killed, the vibrational fear is stored in the cellular memory of that animal and people take this into their own bodies. The second thing is, eating meat does lower the vibrational frequency of the body. Some people need a certain amount of meat for their well-being, but most people would be much better off without eating meat. Rob, thank you, very much. I concur completely on that. Someone wants you to clear up the hollow inhabited earth. Some say it's a portal, that there's a large hole, and some say there's a smaller hole. Can you tell us where the main cavern is of the inner earth? I guess it would be called, maybe the halls of Amenti, where the very tall beings live there, as opposed to the Agarthan network. Explain about the honeycomb earth. Is the center molten, or is there a large area where people inhabit that? Cobra, okay. I would not agree with the hollow earth and I would not agree with the polar opening, but I would agree with the honeycombed earth. There are many caverns, many large tunnel systems, underground rivers, huge spaces, but there is nothing like the central sun within the earth, and there is nothing like the polar opening, and no, the earth is not flat. Rob, okay. Is there a larger civilization of the light that's lived in there for a long time, more towards the center, or no? Cobra, the living conditions more toward the center on the physical plane are simply not supporting life, because if you go deeper, the deeper you go the temperature begins to rise. If you go maybe more than 10 miles below the ground, it gets very hot down there and it's impractical to build anything deeper than maybe 10 miles, or even less. And sometimes the earth crust is not that thick. It does not support building structures down there. So I would say the majority of underground complexes are very close to the surface, I would say up to maximum of a few miles below the surface. Rob, okay. Here's a question in regards to a guy named Stuart Swerdlow, who is a Montauk boy and allegedly he had some positive alien DNA, and one of the things it was said that his father intervened on his behalf and said, my son will not become a murderer because he was in this program. George Bush had contact with him, and he said that there's some groups on the other side of the Kuiper Belt that are assisting humans on this planet in defeating the groups here on Earth that are not necessarily benevolent to humans. They're assisting and have their own agenda and want to be in charge of Earth. Would you agree with that, that it's possible, or some of them are not, or are the light forces completely in charge of that? Cobra, okay. It was true a long time ago, but it's not true anymore. There were huge changes in the last few decades about this whole structure. Rob, okay. One last question here, I think maybe two here. I guess someone wanted to know, is it true that Turkey buys oil from the Islamic State? Cobra, yes, of course, it's true. I think this is obvious. Rob, They wanted to know were there any manipulations in the election of Radagon or whatever? Cobra: yes, of course. This is also obvious. Rob: okay. There was a report that in Thailand there were 1 million students meditating in a concerted Buddhist or priests around the world. Can you talk a little bit about why that did not trigger the event for the 144,000? Cobra: because they were not meditating for the event. They were just meditating to bring the positive resonance of the planet, and that was successful. Rob: okay. And so then, and this kind of goes along with some of the Palladian information that I understand, that what you think about and feel about with emotional intensity over time can become your reality. You're of course interacting with other realities, but the event meditation is very specific, and it's important that people when they're doing that event hold that specific idea of the removal of the cabal. Would you agree with that? Cobra: I would agree that people need to hold the specific idea of manifesting the event and visualizing it and feeling it, and, of course, the removal of the cabal is one aspect of this. Rob: yes, okay. Also, in your last post about the Cooper belt, you said don't worry about this. Obviously, this is something that none of us can possibly be involved with. It's beyond our understanding and knowledge. We're obviously not in outer space. Do you have any information? Are there any aspects of the positive elements of the secret space program involved in this type of thing? Are they still definitely not really taken under the wing of the positive light forces and engagement in these things yet? Cobra: the Cooper belt contains both the Chimera bases and, of course, a lot of light forces that belong to the positive space programs. Rob: oh, good. So there are positive secret space program elements working. Cobra: I would not call them SSP because most of them are not related to this planet. They are not Earth-based space programs that have. They're not Earth-based breakaway civilizations, I would put it this way. Rob: they would be initiates, or like the guy that refused to work for the Cabal program. Cobra: I would say branches of the RM that remain on Planet X, Palladian Fleet, Andromedan Fleet, Syrian Fleet, and other parts of the Confederation, and some new fresh infusions from throughout the galaxy. Rob: thank you. One last question here. You had mentioned that there were going to be some alternative plans. There seems to be an increase in sightings. This keeps ramping up. Is this part of the disclosure process being taken away from the Cabal by the ever-increasing sightings around the world? Cobra: of course. Yes. Rob: are there any chances that the negative Cabal will be creating sightings to claim information that might be used as disinformation? Cobra: you're speaking about the Project Blue Beam most likely. This is not going to happen. Rob: all right. Thank you very much, Cobra. Very interesting. I'm glad you clarified some things on the Creator there. I do have some different information in regards to the Great White Brotherhood and certain aspects of the attempts of these prophets and contactees to bring about certain information about how the universe actually runs, and I would agree with you that they've been turned. But it seems that at a certain point the light forces have intervened with certain incarnations to achieve certain specific missions which have brought about certain changes in a positive way. Would you agree with that? Cobra: yes. Rob: thank you very much. Alright Cobra, thank you so much for coming on again. Sorry we did have a couple of technical difficulties folks. God bless you and victory to the light, Cobra. Cobra: thank you very much. Victory of the light.